And today's speaker is Dr. Sudesh Kumar Sahu. He is an associate professor at IIT Indore, and he obtained PhD from IIT Madras under the supervision of Professor Kannasamy. And his main areas of research includes geometric function theory, Cauchy-conformal mapping, hyperbolic metric, and John domain, and special kind of metrics. And he has published very popular articles such as in a reputed journals, Israel Journal of Mathematics, Journal of Mathematical Analysis and Applications, Math Naharitan, and many other journals. With such a brief introduction, I request Sudesh Kumar Sahu to start his lectures.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Vasu. Anyway, so it is a great opportunity for me, and special thanks goes to, of course, the whole organizing committee, but special thanks goes to Dr. Suman, who sent me the invitation and many communications on this event. Thank you so much, Dr. Suman and the other organizing committee.
Most welcome, sir.
Yeah. So my syllabus actually, already available online. Also, it was communicated to me through email. So I have to start through Cauchy's inequality and applications. By the way, so this is my email ID. If someone wishes to contact me for some discussion, please feel free to contact me. Okay, so this cursor is visible on the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, good. So anyway, so it is good to repeatedly understand certain basic things so that we understand more and more deeply. So, okay. So by the way, so there will be tutorial session by, I understand that by Dr. Manas Ranjan Mohapatra later for my part. So I think if we solve many more problems, then we understand more. That vision should be there. So whatever we discuss in my lecture, those are actually basic, and I try to explain little neatly so that we understand more and more the theory part, and then of course some application like examples are also discussed, and then many more problems will come actually on tutorial part. Okay, so I start with Cauchy's inequality. I hope all of you have studied Cauchy's integral formula. So this will actually come from Cauchy's integral formula immediately. So anyway, let's see, because its title is actually geometry of complex functions. Therefore, I try to give geometry wherever, whenever it is possible or wherever it is possible.
So this, your voice is breaking sometimes.
Voice is breaking. Okay.
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Fine, thanks. So now what this Cauchy's inequality says. Okay. Suppose f is analytic inside and on the circle. So look at the picture. Circle I have drawn here. The notation is C, and center is Z0, and radius is R. This is what the circle. And f is analytic inside this circle and also on the circle. And the second condition is given that f of z modulus is less than or equal to m. It is bounded by m. M is a finite constant on this circle, on C. Then we have this Cauchy's inequality. This is called Cauchy's inequality. So nth derivative of f at z0 at the center, its modulus is bounded by m times n factorial over r power n. Okay. So m is coming from this boundedness, finite constant, and n factorial is coming from nth derivative, and r is coming from the radius of the circle. Okay, so that's all. So this inequality is actually very important and it has many applications. We'll discuss some applications here, of course. So this is what this Cauchy's inequality says. Okay, so I hope it is clear to everybody. If you have any doubts or questions in between, please feel free to ask me. So there is no issue at all. Okay. So most important is understanding the concept, not completing the concept. Okay. So that is that I like. Okay. So here, anyway, so pictorially also this is explained here. So if we understand this pictorially, then it is easy to remember also. So for longer time. Anyway, so let's see the proof, how it goes. So from Cauchy's integral formula, so just nth derivative, what actually Cauchy's integral formula says, once we finish, once we study, once we understand Cauchy's integral formula like this is the formula for this circle, then what happens? It is actually n times differentiable at a point. So this is what analytic function is infinitely differentiable. One of the definitions actually it is there. It comes actually after Cauchy's integral formula. So that is from there actually it follows. Anyway, this is the formula: n factorial over 2 pi I and integral over c. C is that circle, and then f of z over z minus z naught power n plus 1 dz. So now, since we need to estimate, look at the statement again, we need to estimate this quantity. So therefore, modulus we need to take to the formula. So just take modulus. Then modulus of this integral, we have some properties from complex integration, contour integration. So that property we'll be using. And then hypothesis again we'll be using. Then finally, we reach to our destination, whatever we wanted to prove. This is what. So estimating this, we obtain, so left hand side, this modulus of nth derivative of f at z naught. Then less than or equal to n factorial will be there, this is positive, and 2 pi iota, modulus is actually 2 pi. And then this modulus will go inside the integral. Modulus will go inside the integral. Then modulus of f of z is there. And modulus of z minus z naught is there, and n plus 1 power is there in the denominator, and then dz modulus will be there. This is actually by properties of integration. Some modulus properties is there. Now what happens? We need to use hypothesis. So f of z modulus was actually less than or equal to m, capital M. So therefore m is coming here. N factorial is already there. We are not changing anything. 2 pi is already there, 2 pi. Now here denominator r power n plus 1 is there. Why? Because C, this circle is actually z minus z naught mod is equal to r. So therefore this quantity is simply r. R power n plus 1 is there. Now what is remaining is dz modulus. Dz modulus is remaining inside the integral. But what is this quantity? This is what length of the curve. Length of the curve. So C is actually circle. So this perimeter is actually 2 pi r. Radius is r actually. Then this length of the closed curve, closed contour is actually 2 pi r. So therefore 2 pi r is multiplied here. Then we simplify this. 2 pi is getting cancelled. And r factor is getting cancelled. So remaining is n factorial in the numerator times m and denominator r power n. So this is what we wanted to prove it. We wanted to have this inequality. So this completes the proof of this Cauchy's inequality. So if you have any questions or doubt, please let me know on this theorem or on this proof.
Sir, can you illustrate how modulus of dz is having the length of the curve?
This is actually, it comes in complex integration. It's a formula actually. You can just take z equal to r e to the power I theta, you can take and then simplify. So then you will get it. It's unfortunately
Okay,
I
sir.
don't have writing. Yeah. So just you take z equal to r e to the power I theta, just differentiate, and then you can bring it to, because c is varying, this theta is varying from 0 to 2 pi. And then if you simplify this, you will be reaching to length formula. All right.
Okay, sir.
Please try yourself. Yes. It's a very basic
So
exercise.
that is integral 0 to 2 pi gamma
Yes.
dash of t into dt.
Yes.
So in the last
Gamma
class,
dash
we
T
have also
modulus.
seen the same thing.
Yeah. Gamma dash T modulus and then dt.
Thank you, Sudhir.
Yeah.
Sir, FZ is bounded on circle only or a whole closed disk?
Yeah. It is on the circle only. Because we are integrating over the circle. On the circle we are integrating. So not inside. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So this is what statement says, f of z is bounded on the circle. And here also we are integrating on the circle. So therefore we can apply. Okay. Good. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me proceed next.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
if it is bounded on the circle, then it is bounded on disk also.
How do you say that? Something similar, that we will be discussing when we come to maximum modulus principle. Okay, for time being, let's not go to that part. Okay. Okay. So let me, hope up to this it is clear to all. Now, application of Cauchy's inequality. Let's see some applications. We need actually here Taylor's theorem for the first two applications. Though in my syllabus portion, Taylor's theorem is coming late, but I'm just giving the statement briefly, but not the full discussion. So this is what statement says. Of course, it is familiar to most of you, but this will be discussed later in detail. So therefore, I have written here to be discussed later in detail. So, but statement just I actually only need this coefficient formula in terms of derivative. An equal to nth derivative of f at the center over n factorial. So that formula therefore I have to discuss, at least I need to state this theorem. So what it says, look at the picture. Omega is given domain. F is analytic on that omega containing the point A here. Then it is possible power series form. Power series actually of this form. Power series means this is of the form about some point A. About this point A. Of course, again, power series in detail we'll be discussing with radius of convergence and all. So here this power series, now this series is actually convergent in this disk z minus a modulus less than delta. So this delta is actually distance is from A to the nearest boundary of omega. In this picture, this is the nearest boundary. So within this disk, we can write this power series representation of this function, analytic function. Okay. So therefore, it is written, delta is the distance from A, the point A, to the nearest boundary point of omega. Moreover, this an, the coefficient, nth coefficient, will have some integral formula that again, I repeat, this is to be discussed later in detail. Okay. So now just we need this formula, the coefficient an is equal to nth derivative of f at A over n factorial. So this formula we need in the following two applications of Cauchy's inequality. Okay, all right. Now, therefore, most surprisingly, I'm saying with the help of Taylor's theorem and Cauchy's inequality, one can actually characterize entire functions satisfying certain specific region. Function, entire function we can characterize, but function is satisfying certain inequalities in some specific region. So then, we can apply these two theorems. One is Cauchy's inequality, another is Taylor's theorem, to characterize entire functions. Let's see first example, first application. Let m be positive, this be a constant. Then we characterize all entire functions f of z satisfying this modulus of f of z is less than or equal to m times r power lambda. Here this r is actually coming from mod z equal to r. On this circle, this is again, upper bound is actually m times r power lambda. And for lambda positive, lambda can be 0 also, not an issue. Okay. So we have to characterize all entire functions satisfying this. F is satisfying this inequality on this circle. How to do that? So because we are on the circle, we can apply Cauchy's inequality. And because we are characterizing entire functions means it is analytic throughout the complex plane. So therefore, in particular, function has to be analytic inside this circle, mod z equal to r, inside that. So therefore, we can use Taylor's theorem to get such power series of this form. Because this is about origin, center is origin. So therefore, z minus a factor is not there because a is 0. So therefore, just z power n is there. Summation a n z power n. And a n has this formula we know already from Taylor's theorem. So now what happens? What is the idea? If we prove that a n from certain n, then up to n minus 1th term polynomial. Okay, so that is the idea. So how do we do that? Just we apply Cauchy's inequalities on the circle. Then a n modulus is nothing but modulus of nth derivative of f at 0 over n factorial, because a n is that formula. Now nth derivative of f at origin over n factorial is less than or equal to m times r power lambda over r power n. So this is coming from Cauchy's inequality, because fz has upper bound this one, therefore that quantity is coming, and n factorial was there in the numerator, but now since it is already in the denominator here, then we don't have here in the numerator. And denominator we had r power n, here also same r I am choosing, same notation I mean to say. So r power n is there. But here if we keep m in the numerator and bring this r power lambda to the denominator, so therefore minus lambda will be there. So r power n minus lambda. Now you see for what range of n this will go to infinity whenever n tends to infinity. Sorry, r tends to infinity. So then this goes to 0. We need to say. So here an this quantity, maybe the last quantity m over r power n minus lambda goes to 0 whenever n minus lambda is positive. Otherwise, no. Sorry?
Suman, please mute some of the students' mic.
Yeah. So till now, if you have any doubt on this application part, we can discuss, or we can.
Sir, here mod.
Yeah,
Here
please.
mod of fz is less than or equal to.
Yes, f of z mod is less than or equal to capital M times r power lambda on the circle.
No. When we apply that mod of fn0 is less than m n factorial upon r power n, their function was bounded by m.
Yeah. So here function is bounded by m r power lambda. Yeah. Okay, so that is the reason m r power lambda. So you can take this m r power lambda as some other notation, say capital N. Then capital N has to come here by Cauchy.
Yeah, okay, sir. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the reason, Cauchy inequality directly we are applying here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Any more question? Okay, no. We proved that an converges to 0 whenever n is more than lambda. That means what? Up to lambda, this is non-zero. We can say the maximum, up to. So therefore, what we say, fz is a polynomial of degree at most lambda, not beyond lambda, because beyond lambda we are getting 0. So at most lambda. So therefore, what happens? Now we could characterize all entire functions satisfying this inequality. And what are those entire functions? These are actually nothing but polynomial of degree at most lambda, not beyond lambda. So all that means all polynomials are actually entire functions. There are many more entire functions are there. So when Liouville's theorem we will discuss, that time we discuss some of the examples.
Sir, so for exponential or sine function, this condition is not satisfied because they are not polynomial.
Yeah. But right.
Sin z
So-
is unbounded.
Yeah.
Sin z is unbounded. You cannot use.
Sin z, cosine z, they are unbounded function. Exponential function is also unbounded. Okay. So here only polynomial you are getting. Characterizing means there are no other entire functions other than this polynomial. So therefore, there is no question of sine function, cosine function, or exponential function. So these are the only functions, entire functions satisfying this property. This is the meaning. Let us go to the next application, slightly modified form. Here we characterize all those entire functions f satisfying some other type of inequality. So here, mod z power 5 over ln, I mean log with base e modulus of z. And here actually outside the unit disk, mod z is bigger than 1. A function is satisfying like this. How to explain this or how to characterize entire functions satisfying this inequality? Now what we do, because we have mod z is bigger than 1, we choose a number capital R bigger than 1. Outside the unit disk, we choose a number R. This is what, let us choose a number R bigger than 1 arbitrarily, then fix it. I mean, on that circle with radius capital R, we will be applying Cauchy inequality. That is the meaning. Now, since f is entire, it is analytic in this disk, mod z less than R. Okay, entire means it is analytic in the complex plane throughout. So therefore, in particular, in this disk also, the function has to be analytic. Okay. Now what happens? We apply Taylor's theorem in this disk. So fz has Taylor series expansion of the form this one, our series. And center is origin, therefore factor, just factor z square, like this it is there, and coefficients are there as it is. And this coefficient has this formula, nth derivative at origin, because center is origin, and over n factorial. Okay. Now we need to estimate this coefficient an. So if we prove an is 0, what is the idea? If we prove an is 0 for all n bigger than or equal to some m, whenever r is very large, r tends to infinity, then we can claim that f is a polynomial of degree at most m minus n, 1. Similar, like application 1 we discussed, same way. And the idea is same here. And just here we are choosing a circle outside the unit disk. Now, for mod z is equal to r, we have this f of z modulus is less than or equal to this, whatever was given to you. And then it is, since it is outside the unit disk and on the circle also we can apply. So since mod z is equal to capital R, so this is coming R power 5 and denominator ln R, because mod z is equal to R. And let us say this is capital M. This is my capital M. Okay. Now we can apply Cauchy's inequality. So modulus of an is nothing but modulus of derivative, nth derivative at 0 over n factorial. And by Cauchy's inequality, this is less than or equal to m over r power n. Here capital R I have taken. And this is nothing but, because m is nothing but r power 5 over ln r. So that we substitute here. Then r power 5 we bring it to denominator. So minus 5 will be there in the power. So r power n minus 5. And then ln r was there as a factor in the denominator. Now this goes to 0 whenever r goes to infinity. But when n minus 5 is bigger than or equal to 0. Because ln r is there, even though n equal to 5. N equal to 5 means this r power n minus 5 is 1. That is r power 0 is 1. So still 1 over ln r goes to 0 when r tends to infinity. So therefore, this n equal to 5 is included here. However, the first application that was not included because ln r was not there. Some other factor was not there in terms of r. So now n equal to 5 onwards, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on, this an is becoming 0. Therefore, up to 4, we can say maximum degree is 4. Therefore, this shows that because of this an is 0 for all n bigger than or equal to 5. So therefore, we conclude that fz is a polynomial of degree at most 4. So it is coming from Taylor's theorem. Because all coefficients from a5 onwards 0. And therefore, up to 4, up to a4 we can have. So that is a polynomial. So therefore, at most 4. So if you have any question, we can discuss. Is it clear or clear? If some of you, please feel free to ask. Now, we must discuss. No problem.
So, sir, if mod fz is bounded by any number, then it must be a polynomial of certain degree.
Yes, this is what yeah, f is bounded on a circle. Okay, then whatever explanation is there, yes, then we can we can reduce to a polynomial. Provided we could prove these coefficients are actually vanishing from certain range. So it is likely that they will be polynomial. Yes, because on the circle we are taking, and then denominator is coming in terms of radius, then automatically it goes to 0 in the. Okay. Okay. So now application 3 is Liouville's theorem. Liouville's theorem in 3 different ways it is understood, because many authors write in many equivalent form. So I give you all the forms. Sometimes college teachers or students even they confuse. So this is the most familiar, the most popular statement. Every entire and bounded function is constant. Every entire means analytic throughout the complex plane. Bounded means modulus is bounded by some finite constant. Then this function has to be a constant, not other than constant. Some other way also we write a non-constant entire function. For example, sin z, it is a non-constant entire function. It must be always unbounded. Therefore, we can say sin z is unbounded, for example. So it is actually contrapositive statement. Like if we start with right hand side, negation of constant, this non-constant entire function. then it has to be unbounded. Simple. Some other way also, a non-constant bounded function cannot be entire. Like we can give one example, 1 over z outside the delta circle. Delta is positive, so this cannot be entire because at origin it is not analytic. So therefore, in 3 different ways, these are actually second 2 are actually contrapositive statements for the first statement. They are all equivalent. This is Liebowitz theorem. All right. Okay. So let us discuss its proof. Let us discuss its proof. Suppose that f is entire with modulus of f of z is bounded above by m for all z in complex plane, because this is given entire and bounded. So for some constant m, of course, entire and bounded. This is what hypothesis says. Now what happens? What is the idea? If we prove that derivative of f is 0 for all z, then we can say that f is constant, right? This follows from one of the theorem. If derivative is 0, first derivative is 0 for in a domain, then f has to be constant in that domain. And here domain is the whole complex plane. So therefore, if we prove derivative is vanishing, first derivative is vanishing for all point in the complex plane, then we can say that f is constant throughout the complex plane. This is the idea. So derivative is vanishing means something related to Cauchy's inequality. Derivative term is coming, or Cauchy's integral formula one can use. Let's see. Now let us take some arbitrary point z0 instead of z, and then finally we can replace z0 with z. Doesn't matter. So now we prove that derivative, first derivative at z0 is 0. This is what we wanted to prove. But we for this we take the help of Cauchy's inequality. Cauchy's inequality we know, and then we need to prove this first derivative is vanishing. Now it is given that f is analytic in the whole complex plane C. This is the notation for complex plane, and it is analytic in the disk. This z minus z0. Z0 is actually given point. Already we assumed. So we take a disk with radius capital R. For any radius R positive, just arbitrarily choose some disk, so that we can apply Cauchy's inequality on this disk, on the circle, on the boundary, in fact. So now, by hypothesis, so because function is bounded on the whole complex plane, it is given. Therefore, function has to be bounded in particular in this circle, on this circle. Z minus Z0 mod is equal to R. That is denoted by C, so that we can apply Cauchy's inequality. This is the reason we have chosen this radius or the disk, so that we can apply Cauchy's inequality. All right. So by Cauchy's inequality, it follows. What is this? Is n equal to 1 here. First derivative means n equal to 1. So therefore, n factorial means it is 1 factorial in the numerator. So just m over r. R power n was there, but n is 1. So therefore, r is coming. So this is for every r positive. Now, when r is tending to what? Infinity, because r is arbitrarily chosen. So therefore, when r tends to infinity, this quantity is tending to 0. So therefore, f prime z0 is actually coming to 0. Because f prime z0 modulus tends to less than or equal to 0, but it is actually bigger than or equal to 0. So therefore, f prime z0 is actually equal to 0 coming. So this is what we wanted to prove. So since z0 is arbitrary, we can say that f prime z is 0. So this is what written. F prime z is 0 for all z in C. And by that theorem, as we discussed, the f has to be constant function. So this is very simple proof of this Liebowitz theorem. So any question please on this Liebowitz theorem? I hope everybody understood. So if there are no questions, we can move maybe. Yeah, any question? No. Okay. Now applications of Liebowitz theorem. First we start with Cauchy's inequality, then its applications. Then as an application of Cauchy's inequality, we just discussed Liebowitz theorem. Then now we go for application of Liebowitz theorem. So first is first application is called actually generalized Liebowitz theorem. So what it says, a non-constant entire function like sine z, cosine z, polynomials, where non-constant polynomials I should say, and exponential function, those are non-constant entire function. They actually come arbitrarily close to every complex number. For example, as I mentioned, or their linear combinations, in fact, they are also entire. Some of the picture, from Mathematica, I try to draw, but some specific, like I have taken z equal to r e to the power it. Yeah. R is actually for first two picture, cosine z and sine z, r I have taken till 5, 0 to 5. And for the last two picture, r I have chosen from 0 to 2. So these pictures are giving for certain values of z, so that you can have a feeling how actually, like in case of real analysis, curve tracing is little bit easy, and depending on again the function, but in complex it is not easy. So therefore we take the help of certain tools like Mathematica or MATLAB. So these are the functions. This is cosine function with some values, and this is sine function. The third one is exponential function, and the fourth one is actually the polynomial. I have taken z plus z square by 2, z plus z square by 2. Somehow I missed to write, maybe. So anyway, so this is a polynomial. From a polynomial it is coming. So when we increase the radius, then many overlapping will be there. Like here overlapping. For sine z we are overlapping here. For cosine z we are getting overlapping here. But up to radius 1 there will be no overlapping. But this is something related to harmonic or univalent functions. But that is higher study. I'm not going to discuss those things. Anyway, so it says a non-constant entire function like this, they comes arbitrarily close to every complex number. That means they take every complex value arbitrarily. There may be some some possible exceptions, like exponential function, it does not take 0. So maybe one exceptions, but almost every complex value they take. So proof of this, this is called generalized Liebowitz theorem. Why? Because we apply Liebowitz theorem to prove this. It is named as generalized Liebowitz theorem by some authors. Okay. So like we prove this theorem by contradiction method. Contradiction is actually equivalent to contrapositive method. Contrapositivity of a statement. And we use Liebowitz theorem here. How? Its proof is very simple. Suppose, because we want to apply contradiction method, suppose that f of z is entire. It is given, right? Non-constant entire function. It is given. And that suppose fz is entire, and this fz does not come arbitrarily close to every complex value. So this is on contrary we are assuming. Then what we prove that f is constant, but hypothesis says that f is non-constant. So that will be a contradiction. So this is the idea of the proof. and this will lead to a contradiction to the hypothesis, because hypothesis says non-constant. If you look at the hypothesis, it says non-constant. But by applying Liouville's theorem, we will prove that this is constant. So therefore, if it does not come arbitrarily close to every complex value, then what will happen? This is what. So there we can find a complex number A such that this f of z minus the difference will be bigger than equal to some constant k, because they do not come close to A. Therefore, there will be some distance gap. So therefore, at least more than k, it will be there, difference between them for some constant positive. So this is what, when we say f of z does not come arbitrarily close to a complex number, that means there is a gap between those two. That means at least the k distance is there. Then what happens? Just we take the reciprocal of this. 1 over f of z minus a modulus will be less than or equal to 1 over k. The inequality will be reversed. And here gz I am taking as 1 over fz minus a. Then modulus is coming less than or equal to 1 over k. So this is my notation of gz. So now we apply this Liouville's theorem for gz, because gz is bounded by some constant here. And you see, since f is entire, the new function is also entire. Because f of z can never be a, therefore denominator cannot be actually zero. So therefore, this is entire function, and also it is bounded, and hence it has to be constant. By Liouville's theorem, g has to be constant. So this is what. So when g is constant, then f has to be also constant, because they are very trivially they are related. So therefore f is a constant function. So we are getting a contradiction. So this is what explanation. So if any question, please feel free to ask on this. Yeah, so we just completed 45 minutes. Yeah. If you have any question on this particular part, we can discuss generalized Liouville's theorem. No question? Okay. Okay. Next application of this Liouville's theorem is the fundamental theorem of algebra from abstract algebra. It's very well known. Now, what it says, every non-constant polynomial, it talks about non-constant polynomial, not any entire function other than polynomial. Here, polynomial, specific entire function. So every non-constant polynomial has at least 1 0. This is fundamental theorem of algebra, at least 1 0. Of course, from here we can conclude, if we take a non-constant polynomial or a polynomial of degree n, then it will have n zeros. That we can deduce from here. So first let us prove it has at least 1 0. Suppose Pz is a polynomial of degree positive. Positive. Maybe you can take n is bigger than 0. Positive. Then what happens? What is the idea of the proof? So we prove this theorem through contradiction method by assuming that Pz never vanishes. Because it says that, statement says it has at least 1 0. Now contrapositive means we need to assume that suppose it has no zeros. That means we are assuming Pz never vanishes. That we are assuming. Then we must get a contradiction. We must get a contradiction. We'll see. Okay, that is the idea. So therefore, we need to assume on contrary that Pz never vanishes. That means it will have no zeros. It will have no zeros. This is the idea. Then what happens when pz is non-vanishing, then 1 over pz we can say it is entire function. There is no z, so that pz is 0. That means 1 over pz will be entire function. It is analytic throughout. This we are getting. All right. So anyway, by the way, I missed to announce or say that one need not write. If you have any question or doubts on certain points, you can write on your note, because these lecture slides I will be sharing to the organizer, who will share with you. This is what instruction is, or lecture note, but I will be happy to share this presentation file, so that PDF version, so that it is easy to follow rather than reading some A4 size paper. So and later also, if you have any doubts from this lecture note or lecture slides, you can write to me, you can mail me, so we can discuss our emails. There is no issue. So what happens here, when 1 over pz is entire, then if we prove that 1 over pz is bounded, then we can apply Libeli's theorem. So 1 over pz will be constant in that case. So now we need to show that 1 over pz is bounded. So then it will lead to a contradiction that pz will be constant, because hypothesis says every non-constant polynomial. So therefore, through by Libeli's theorem, again we will conclude that pz is constant. That will contradict to hypothesis. The hypothesis says non-constant. So therefore, we need to show only, or it remains to prove that 1 over pz is bounded. How to do that? We know that pz is diverging to infinity for z diverging to infinity, because pz is a polynomial, simple. When z tends to infinity, pz also will go to infinity. There is no doubt. So therefore, 1 over pz will be tending to 0 as z tends to infinity. Actually, modulus of z I should have written, but doesn't matter. It is in that sense. So 1 over pz tends to 0 whenever z tends to infinity. Then what happens? So when z tends to infinity, that means we can choose a larger radius r, capital R, so that whenever mod z is bigger than that r, then we see that 1 over pz mod is less than 1, because 1 over pz mod tends to 0, very close to 0. So therefore, when z tends to infinity, so therefore we can choose very large r, so that this, because this quantity is tending to 0, so modulus has to be bounded by 1. So we can always choose such large r. So therefore, for a large r, so we are getting this 1 over pz is bounded by 1. So now this is actually outside. This is outside the disk, mod z bigger than r. Now we need to prove that inside the disk also, mod z less than or equal to r also, 1 over pz has to be bounded. So then only throughout we can say that it is bounded. This is what we wanted to prove. So therefore, it remains to show 1 over pz is bounded for mod z less than or equal to r, because we just proved this is bounded for mod z bigger than r. So what is remaining inside the disk and on the disk also, circle also, mod z is equal to r. So therefore, once we prove 1 over pz is bounded for this, then throughout the complex plane 1 over pz will be bounded. And that is already entire, because pz is non-zero already, we have discussed. So therefore, but this is trivial, because this mod z less than or equal to r is a compact set, a closed and bounded set. And this is continuous function, because entire means is analytic means it is continuous. So therefore, since continuous functions on compact sets are actually bounded, therefore 1 over pz is bounded on this mod z is less than or equal to r. So that's it. So therefore, 1 over pz is bounded for all z in the complex plane, and this is leading to the conclusion. Because 1 over pz is bounded, we just proved, 1 over Pz is entire we have discussed. Therefore, by Lipschitz theorem, 1 over Pz is constant. And this will imply that Pz has to be also constant. So that is a contradiction to the hypothesis, because hypothesis says non-constant polynomial, but we are getting a constant polynomial. So therefore, we started with on contrary, Pz is non-vanishing. Now we are getting a contradiction to the fact that f is actually Pz is actually non-constant. That was the hypothesis. Yeah. So if you have any question, we can discuss on this part. So by the way, Suman, is there any mechanism, or is there any guideline that there should be some break in between, or we continue till 1.5 hours?
Yeah, you can continue, sir.
Okay, fine.
As per your convenience. Yes.
Okay. Now, because I do not know how it is going on, I have not attended any other lecture. So therefore, yeah, you can guide me. You can just tell me.
Yes.
Continuous, Swadesh.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So any question so far on this?
Sir,
Yeah.
mod of Pz in place of Pz, there should be mod of Pz tends to infinity.
Where?
First line of the slide.
First line of this slide. Yeah. So here modulus actually we should take Pz modulus tends to infinity for modulus of z tends to infinity. Yeah, that will be more clear. Yes, more suitable. Yes, because complex number has no ordering. If you understand in that sense, yes, we should have modulus there. But in fact, when we say one function is bounded, one complex function is bounded, means modulus is actually bounded by something. So in that sense, actually, in that sense also it is understood. When Pz tends to infinity means its modulus is actually tending to infinity. In that sense, actually, I have written. But anyway, it will be more clear if we put the modulus there. I already told there. Good. Yeah. So if there are no questions, we can proceed for next. I hope everything is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good. Yeah. So next, this is what I already mentioned. We can derive from fundamental theorem of algebra that every polynomial of degree n has exactly n zeros. They, of course, not necessarily distinct. There may be multiplicity, but exactly n zeros. We can, if we take polynomial of degree n. How? Just from the statement what we just the existence of at least one zero. Let us assume that zero be z1. Then what happens? This z minus z1 will be a factor where at z1 it is vanishing. That is the meaning z1 is a zero or root. So then this z minus z1 expression you can just factor it out. Then it is remaining. You have a polynomial of degree n minus 1. So 1 degree is reduced. When we take this z minus z1 factor out. So now we have a polynomial of degree n minus 1. Then it will have again, by fundamental theorem of algebra, it will have again at least 1 0. Okay. Then again, you take that factor out. Like this you continue, then we will be getting actually exactly n zeros. This is the idea. So applying the fundamental theorem of algebra, I have denoted here FDA, fundamental theorem of algebra, to this new polynomial, degree n minus 1, we can obtain another 0. Then this process can be repeated n times to have n zeros. Simple proof. So therefore, as a consequence of fundamental theorem of algebra, we can say that a polynomial of degree n has exactly n zeros. Of course, this has a different proof later, but we are not going to discuss that because I don't see that part in the syllabus. Like Roche's theorem is an application of Roche's theorem. We can prove also. But anyway, this is proved here using, it is actually direct consequence of fundamental theorem of algebra. So again, if we compare with generalized Libeli's theorem, what was generalized Libeli's theorem? Every non-constant entire function assumes almost all complex value. But here specifically for polynomial, polynomials are actually entire functions. If we have a polynomial of degree n, they will assume each number exactly n times. We have more information when we talk about polynomial of degree n. We have more information than generalized Libeli's theorem. So how does it follow? It's generalized Libeli's theorem. We recall here, a non-constant entire function comes arbitrarily close to every complex number. But this corollary have more information about, particularly about polynomial of degree n. They assume each complex number doesn't matter. That also says by generalized Libeli's theorem. But here extra information is exactly n times. Exactly n times. So therefore, how does it follow? Let us take one arbitrary complex number c, small c. Then what happens? Pz is a polynomial of degree n. By hypothesis, we have to assume one polynomial of degree n. Then write this qz as pz minus c. And this is also a polynomial of degree n. Now we have a polynomial of degree n. This qz is a polynomial of degree n. Then we apply fundamental theorem or the corollary one, the previous corollary one. This qz has n zeros. Specifically, it has n zeros. When qz has n zeros, that means whenever qz is 0, pz will be c, that constant. Since qz has n zeros, therefore p takes c n times. This is the idea. But qz is 0 if and only pz is c. That is trivial. And because because qz takes 0 n times, so therefore pz takes the value c n times. This is what the proof. So therefore, because c was arbitrary complex number and pz is taking the value c n times. This is what the statement. Every polynomial of degree n assumes each complex number exactly n times. This is what the proof. Exactly n times. Very simple as a consequence of fundamental theorem of algebra. Okay. So any question please on this? No? Okay. Now, of course, this maximum modulus principle is the next part coming in my, the syllabus content, whatever is given to me. And this maximum modulus principle is also called maximum modulus theorem, the first form. There are two forms actually. The first form is called maximum principle or maximum modulus principle. And other one is called maximum modulus theorem specifically. That we will discuss later. And that will be the second form of maximum modulus theorem. What does it say actually? So if f is analytic and non-constant in a domain D, then its absolute value has no maximum. F is analytic, is given in a domain, and it's a non-constant also, then its absolute value has no maximum in D. It has no maximum in D. Of course, again, similar to Libeli's theorem, there are three ways of understanding the statement. Here also same thing. There are three ways of understanding this statement. It's more of a contrapositive, this or equivalent statement. How one can understand in other way? Like if f is analytic in a domain, that is already given, and earlier it was non-constant. Then conclusion was its absolute value has no maximum. But here we are assuming in the negation of the conclusion, that is its absolute value has a maximum in D, then f must be constant. Simple. That means analytic function in a domain and its absolute value has a maximum in D, then f has to be constant. F has to be constant. And some other way also one can understand, if f is analytic in a domain D, then modulus of f cannot attain a maximum unless f is constant. This way also, language, just changing the language, nothing else. Modulus of f cannot attain a maximum unless f is constant. Okay. So there are three different ways this maximum modulus principle is understood. And various authors write various languages. So therefore, but all are equivalent. There is nothing to worry at all. Now, when we talk about proof of this theorem or proof of this principle, then we need certain information. And those information first we need to discuss to deal the proof of this theorem. Okay. So now one question I ask. Does this Liebowitz theorem follow from this maximum modulus principle, MMP, maximum modulus principle? So may I have answer to this? Very basic question. Look at the middle sentence. F is analytic in a domain D. D can be the whole complex plane. Its absolute value has a maximum in D. Then F must be constant. Can we say that Liebowitz theorem follow from this maximum modulus principle?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Actually, no.
The other way follows, right, sir?
Sorry?
The other way it may be true, right, sir?
Other way is trivial, right?
Yeah. But this, I think it is not
Other
following.
way also, we cannot say, because if we replace this domain D by C, then it is okay.
Yeah, by the entire complex plane, it may work.
Yeah. But again, maximum has to attain inside the domain. Yeah. But how to say it is no? Because when we take modulus of F, when we are saying modulus of F has a maximum in D, but that quantity may not be a finite quantity, right? Because now when we take an interior point where maximum is attaining, so this modulus may not be a finite constant. Because when we say Liebowitz theorem, modulus of f of z is bounded by some finite constant. So here, a maximum may not be a finite constant. So this is the problem. So though it looks like that Liebowitz theorem follow from here, but here is the problem. It may vanish. So therefore, actually Liebowitz theorem does not follow from this maximum modulus principle.
Sir, but I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, maximum means it is the supremum, right? Supremum when it is given in that set.
Yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah,
supremum,
so it should be finite, right?
Supremum may be infinity in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the problem. So what is supremum of 1 by z? So when
Yes,
z
yes.
is,
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So we will discuss, the radius of convergence, in the power series case, that radius of convergence also can be infinity. So similarly here, this maximum may be, this value may be unbounded. Okay. But we should have, to apply, to compare with Liebowitz theorem, we must have a finite constant. So that is there is the problem. Okay. Otherwise, Otherwise, it could have been straightforward. Anyway, it's just a remark. Now, for the proof of this maximum modulus principle, we need the behavior of an analytic function. Analytic function, how does it behave at a sequence of points that influences its behavior elsewhere, other places. If we have some information about or on the set of on the sequence of points in a domain, then can it behave throughout the domain? The first result actually brings this concept in a disk. This is called uniqueness theorem for a disk. Look at the picture, pictorially also it is very easy to follow. This uniqueness theorem for a disk. Actually, we need uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domain, or for a disk especially, to have complete understanding of the proof of maximum modulus principle. Of course, there are different proofs, but whatever proof we are going to discuss, there we need. So what does it say? Look at the picture. F is given, F is analytic in the disk. This is the disk center at A, radius R. So inside this disk, function is analytic given. Now suppose we have Zn, the sequence of points, distinct points converging to the center A. Look at the picture. And on those sequence, this Zn, they are actually zeros of F. That means F of Zn is 0. If this is happening, then F will be vanishing throughout the disk. This is what uniqueness theorem says. So it goes to the unique point 0. This is what it is called uniqueness theorem. So this is uniqueness theorem for a disk, and its proof is very simple. How does it follow? Let's see. Again here, we will apply Taylor's theorem that the function f is a power series expansion about z equal to a. Because we are saying that f is analytic in a disk. In the disk, z minus a mod less than r. So a is center, radius is r. Inside this disk, function is analytic. Then Taylor's theorem says it is a power series expansion in this disk. That means this series is convergent in this disk. That means f of z we can write is equal to this in this disk. That means a naught plus a naught, a1 times z minus a plus a2 times z minus a whole square, and so on, an times z minus a whole power n. And what is the idea? To prove f is identically equal to 0. This is what we wanted to prove, right? F is identically equal to 0 everywhere in the disk. That is our m. So if we prove ans are 0 for each n, each coefficients are actually 0, then automatically f of z is 0. So this is the idea. Now we need to prove an is 0 for each n. First, let us see how to prove a0 is 0, and then a1 is 0, then a2 is 0. Then inductively same procedure will follow to show that an is 0 for each n. Now what we do? The analyticity of f is analytic given, guarantees that f is continuous at z equal to a. Analytic means it is continuous automatically. Now, because it is differentiable on a neighborhood of a, so therefore it is continuous at a. So limit definition or the sequence definition, sequential limit, it says, of the continuity, that whenever Zn goes to a, then f of Zn goes to f of a. That is one of the characterization of continuity. So that characterization we use here. What happens? Now by assumption, what we get? Limit n tends to infinity, f of Zn. This is actually equal to 0. How? Because it is already given. Look at the hypothesis again. F of Zn is 0 for each n. F of Zn is 0 for each n given. Then we are going to prove that the f of z is 0. So that means this limit f of Zn is 0, but this limit is actually f of a from the previous statement. Therefore, f of a is 0. But what is f of a from the Taylor series? F of a is just a naught. F of a is just a naught. So therefore, a naught is 0. A naught is 0. Now we remove this a naught because a naught is 0. Then we can rewrite f of z starting from a1. Then what happens? We have to prove that a1 is 0. How to prove? Just take z minus a factor out. Then we write a1 plus a2 times z minus a plus a3 times z minus a whole square, so on. Continue. So this is what, then z minus a we take left hand side to the denominator, then apply limit. Then what happens? This limit n tends to infinity because so this quantity is actually a1 because when n tends to infinity, Zn tends to a. This is what it is given. And the sequence is converging to the center point a. In the hypothesis, let me go back. The sequence Zn in the picture you can see, or you can read there. Zn is approaching to a. Therefore, this is there. Whenever n tends to infinity, Zn approaches to a. So when Zn approaches to a, then you see all the factors are becoming 0 except the first term a1. Therefore, this a1 is coming. But what is f of Zn? F of Zn is exactly equal to 0. So therefore, this limit, but Zn is not equal to a, remember. So therefore, by limit definition, this limit has to be 0. So therefore, a1 has to be 0. Continue same way. We continue. So in general, inductively, so we just take z minus a power p common, then we start from ap, then ap plus 1 times z minus a, and so on. So similar way, this limit actually will be 0, and this is exactly nothing but ap, the first factor. Remaining factor will be 0 whenever zn goes to a. So therefore, f of Zn, when we take f of Zn, so everywhere Zn minus a will be their factor. So that will go to 0. So therefore, this limit actually 0, which is actually equal to ap, similar to the previous explanation. So therefore, an is 0 for each n inductively, and result follows. So when an is 0 for each n, so from this Taylor's theorem, this expression f of z is actually equal to 0. So this is what we wanted to prove. F of z is 0 everywhere in the disk. So proof is simple. Just it's a matter of calculation and then applying the hypothesis appropriately to get the solution.
So there is a question.
Yeah, please.
As Zn tends to a, as n tends to infinity, then the sequence Zn minus a tends to 0. Then how is it possible limit n tends to infinity f Zn by Zn minus a equal to 0?
Because f of Zn is exactly equal to 0.
Yes, sir. F of Zn is exactly 0, but limit Zn tends to a. So when we will take the limit as n tends to infinity, then Zn minus a is also goes to 0.
Yeah. So you
then
can,
this form becomes 0 by 0.
It is not 0 by 0. It is, of course, limit when you consider it is 0 by 0, but this f of Zn is already 0. 0 by actually non-zero term. Forget about the limit term, limit expression. Just f of Zn over Zn minus a is actually 0. Isn't it?
Yeah.
F of Zn over Zn minus a, because Zn is not equal to a, remember. So you can recall the limit. You must have done many limits when numerator is exactly equal to 0, then automatically limit will be 0, even though denominator is coming in the limiting sense 0. Otherwise, you can take L'Hopital's rule to prove it.
So this we can think in this way, right, sir? Considering as new sequence and as first, if you consider f of z divided by zn minus a as g of zn, then g of z1 is 0, g of z2 is also 0 in this way. So it will be a 0 sequence. So it will converge to 0.
Sorry, can you repeat? Denominator.
So like f of z1 by z1 minus a, right, sir?
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
you
yeah.
make, n equals to 1, then it is f of z1 by z1 minus a. That is 0.
Yes.
Similarly, f of z2 by that thing is also 0.
Exactly. That
So
is
it
what
is
I am
a zero
saying.
sequence.
Yes. Actually, f of zn over zn minus a is 0. Simple. Then limit will be 0. Very simple to understand. Okay. So because you are taking the limit, you are considering the limit, that is the problem. But if you just remove the limit part and just take f of zn over zn minus a, that quantity itself 0 is equal to 0 directly. So therefore limit is 0. Simple. It is not like 0 by 0 form in the limiting sense. It is actually exactly equal to 0 without limit. Then automatically limit is also 0. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
sir, in the statement, the sequence Zn converges to the center point.
Yes.
So suppose we have another sequence which converges to some other point in the disk and f of Zn is 0, then can you conclude that f is 0 in that case?
Yes,
So
that
now-
part we are coming. We are coming. If one sequence, sequence of zeros converging to another point,
Yes, sir.
but inside the disk,
Yes, yes.
then also that will happen. That is actually uniqueness theorem for general domain. That we are going to discuss afterwards.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. The time 6:20. So maybe yeah, if you have further questions, we can discuss. Otherwise, I can continue maybe one more.
Hello, Sudhis. Hello. Hello, Sudhis. Hello, Sudhis. Hello, Sudhis.
Yes, he's disconnected. Right?
Yeah, I'm just calling. I'm just calling.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sudhis, I think you have been disconnected. Yeah. We could not see. Just can you just? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. The speaker lost the network connection and he is rejoining in just a minute. Kindly just wait for some time. Suman, is it possible to pause the recording instead of just stopping it?
Pause is not option.
Okay.
We shall continue then.
Yeah. He will be joining.
Yes.
He lost the network.
Yeah, he's
Yeah. So this is it possible for you to join or okay. Thank you sir. Hi Sudesh. You can unmute your mic, Sudesh. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, yes, now it works.
Yeah, thank you, Sudesh.
Yeah. So should we continue or maybe we can stop here, or what is your suggestion?
Yeah, you can stop here and you can just
Yeah, we
if you
can.
have any doubts and
Yeah, we should have more introduction session. Yeah. Yeah, there are
Sudesh,
15.
I have a small comment.
Yeah, please.
There is one
Suggest.
slide. If you can show, can you able to share the slides again?
Okay, just a minute.
In one of the slides, the function f of z is equals to mod z power something by ln mod z. Can you just go back to that slide?
Okay.
There is a small typo is there.
Oh, really? I didn't mark it. So maybe the second application of process inequality.
So, no. Actually, the function is analytic for mod z greater than r. Here. So, yeah. Next slide. So this next slide. See here, for outside of the unit disk, the function is defined, right? Is bounded by that quantity.
Yeah.
So if you take r is greater than 1, the function is entire and analytic for mod z greater than r. That is r greater than 1, mod z greater than r. That's outside of the disk. That is outside of the unit disk. That is an analytic function. So if you take mod z less than r, it includes the origin.
Yes. No. This is what we want. No, because function is entire. That means analytic throughout the complex plane. Only this inequality hold in the outside of the unit disk. So when we say f is entire, that means it is analytic in this disk. Because analyticity in this disk is required to apply Taylor's theorem. Isn't it? Yeah. That is what we need. This analyticity we need. But inequality we are applying on the R. But R is bigger than 1, therefore you can apply this inequality. Here we don't have to take mod z bigger than R. If we take mod z bigger than R, we cannot apply Taylor's theorem. All right?
Okay. Some small misunderstanding, nothing else.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other question, please? Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
Sir, what is the need of mod z greater than 1 in this characterization?
That is actually to apply Cauchy's inequality. Look at here. We have applied Cauchy's inequality here. because this inequality is valid for mod z bigger than 1 and r is bigger than 1 we have chosen. So therefore we can apply Cauchy's inequality. To apply Cauchy's inequality, we need a number r which is bigger than 1. That's it.
ln1 is 0, therefore
No, mod z bigger than 1. That is the reason.
no. His question is why you want mod z greater than
Oh,
1.
okay. Yeah.
So
Yes.
ln1 is 0, therefore we are considering outside of the unit.
Yes. Yeah, here in the statement, yes. If mod z is equal to 1, then problem is there. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other question, please?
So in the generalized Liouville's theorem, it's the entire non-zero function, then it attains every complex number, right, sir?
Yeah.
Like, and there you give the example of an exponential function. It is entire and non-constant, but it does not attain 0.
Yeah.
So, sir, there's instead of writing, sir, every complex number, can we replace this every by almost like that?
Arbitrarily close to, that is the reason, comes arbitrarily close to, not exactly. Okay. That is the meaning, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But again, Picard's theorem will come, but that is not part of here. Picard's theorem said possibly with one exception, it like e to the power z, it has one exception, 0. It cannot go to 0. It cannot take the value 0. Picard's theorem actually says more precisely.
And sir, one more, sir, like maximum modulus, can we, in the same statement, can we say that modulus of that thing, absolute value, does not attain minimum value as well? Can we?
Yes. That is also true. That we'll discuss when we prove that. After that, we'll discuss.
In the coming class, we will discuss that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so if there are no doubts, no questions, then let us thank the speaker. Do you have any questions?
Sir, actually,
Rohit.
is this Cauchy's inequality is best possible, or we can also get some more good inequality? Because n factorial is in numerator, no, sir?
Yes, n factorial is in numerator. Yeah. So,
can we get more good estimation of that upper bound, sir?
Okay, very good point. Let me think. Do you have time or no? It's time is there is no other lecture right after this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no other lecture. Yeah, please.
No. Yes.
Okay. How to go back to? Okay. I got it. Yeah, it's a good point. That means we must get a function where equality holds. If this is sharp, if this inequality is sharp. Yeah. N factorial is there. Or at least can we say equality holds for some? Okay. How about
so z power n will work?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Some polynomial. Suppose we take z power n, nth derivative will be
some constant time in factorial times
n, right? Z power n means nth derivative. N, and of course, it is depending on the bound. This when we say it is bounded, it is depending on that bound M. So, in that case,
see, f power n of z0 by n factorial is nothing but your an. That is the Taylor coefficient. So your Taylor coefficients are less than or equal to m by r power n. So that depends on the what kind of class you take. Suppose if you specify the class, okay, then you will get the bounds. For example, if you add the univalency or something, so then you will see that is the best bound.
Yeah, in general, probably no, but I need to think, yes. Because it is depending on the upper bound for modulus of f of z. So if that is sharp enough, then probably we can, that means M has to attend at a point on the circle. Then probably we can say yes. Because n factorial is independent of integration, and then r power n, that will come as a from formula it will come. Once we bring this m outside, then it is enough. So because f of z modulus is designated, that is depending on f. So that is the reason we should have, if f of z modulus is equal to m on C, then probably.
Sir, actually this
No,
can act
this
as
question
answer.
is so this Rohit question is it the best possible, or we can get a better than this estimation? That's what. Am I right?
Yeah, so I do not know. My answer is I do not know, but maybe next class I will have some idea. I'll tell you tomorrow.
So actually this bound is getting worse now. As n goes very large, this bound is getting very worst. Because we should get a better bound on derivative.
This one should understand not in terms of derivative, Rohit. F or n of z0 by n factorial is nothing but an. That is the Taylor coefficient is bounded by m by r power n. In that sense, you have to understand.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. But of course, as Vasu mentioned, in higher study in univalent function theory, there are many discussion about bound for Taylor coefficient. In fact, Bieberbach conjecture, which is known as de Bruijn's theorem, was proved after several years. So, but there are many studies still going on for other classes. So therefore, some criteria is required. Univalency, as you mentioned, depends on function. Then only we can talk about sharpness. Yeah. But under some restrictions, some sharpness are already studied in higher study, higher complex analysis. Yeah. Good point. But that is research oriented, and there are study. Sharpness part is already studied. On unit disk, it is studied, for instance. Yes. Okay, good.
So, if there are no questions, let us thank Dr. Sudesh.
Sir, one thing, sir, in this regard. So if we consider the sequence like factorial n by r to the power n and take the ratio un plus 1 by un, then we will get altogether capital M by r. So can we say something like if we take m by r less than 1, something like that, relate, then actually this bound goes to 0 as n tends to infinity. So in that sense, this bound is quite well good enough, sir.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, but how do you apply this ratio test here? What is ratio test?
No, on the right hand side, that sequence factorial n by r to the power.
Okay. Doesn't matter, you can just verify. You can just have a trial and error method. You can check. Maybe we can discuss further tomorrow.